Hello, welcome to Frank's School. 171st day of the fourth year. This is the first video, and this I will call the last day of Portugal 2015, of this trip that I made together with the Hocklings to Portugal. I've described it as having 5 acts. Oops, I'm skipping. Oh, there's 2. First act was getting to Lisbon, going to Belém, going out to Sintra, and more, Cascais. Second act, we got on the road, we traveled up the coast, we stopped at Óbidos and Nazaré, and then other cities along the coast, Coimbra, the Roman ruins. The third act was the mountains, and that was real specifically for me. There we went up into the mountains. I wanted to see some of the abandoned villages, Aldeias do Xisto, and terraces. And then the fourth act was Coimbra itself, the city, and then Tomar, and back to Lisbon. And now the fifth act is the last day. I said it began in my mind with a dancing girl, and I put that on there. Alrighty, well, that was Saturday night. Sunday we went our separate ways. The Hocklings and I. I had a mission of my own, and I sort of love to think about the Hocklings that day, going out into the city. I really do I don't like cities, period, but of all cities, Lisbon is probably my favorite. And there were the Hocklings. Well, you'll be able to see they'll share what they saw, because Shirley has made a slideshow, and that will be the third video for this day. And then Thomas made a video, and that will be the fourth that I'll put on. Now, what about the second one? And that, in my mind, there is the finale. I'll leave you with the Hocklings for the finale of this trip. What I did that day was very much more particular for me. I already explained a little bit on the way. I stopped at the tropical garden in Belém, but my destination that day was to go to the Galerias da Vida Rural in the Museum of Ethnology, the National Museum of Ethnology in Lisbon, in Belém, technically, really. And there are people there that would know me. I spoke to 3 of them personally, and I think there's 4 that will remember that I was there. The first one was Claudia, and I didn't see her, or Claudia. I didn't see her this day, but 10 days earlier, she and I had an unforgettable conversation for me, because she was the one that said, we have that stuff. We have those items. And let me remind you that all the way back in 1970, I think it was, my first wife and I had visited, at that time it was called the Museum of Popular Art. And in the Museum of Popular Art was this collection of incredible artifacts. And then for, 45 years, I had not known where they got to, because I'd gone back wanting to visit it again. And the museum is still there, but it has popular art. It doesn't have the artifacts from rural life, which had so excited me at that time. Well, I found them, and Claudia said, we have those things. And the best I could do that day was to buy this rather expensive but wonderful book in Portuguese that has photographs. I'm just not sure how well you can see this. Very well photographed, but I think only 40% of the collection was photographed before the effort has at least temporarily stopped. Well, anyway, that was Claudia. Wonderful conversation, and at that time too, she or our conversation planted a seed in my head, which I'll tell you about here finally. But anyway, the Book Cellar, there's a little bookshop there, and I didn't get his name, but I spoke at considerable length with him. He's the one who told me I was lucky to have that book. Paulo is the director. I'm not using their full names because I don't know if they care about privacy, but And he's the one who made it possible for me to see this stuff. Claudia had given me his email address. We'd written back and forth, and he had decided that I was worthy. I think my desire was worthy to open the doors and let me go in to see the collection. And then Anna was my guide. It was a Sunday afternoon, and this was a special arrangement made, and she was my guide and took me down into the gallerias. In retrospect, I sort of felt like Dante with his guide Virgil, the Divine Comedy is called. He goes down into Inferno and Purgatorio and Paradiso, Hell, Purgatory, and Paradise, and he goes in the company of Virgil, the author of the Aeneid. Well, this was far from an inferno. This was a paradiso in a way for me, but I had my guide, my own personal guide, and I photographed everything that I could, and it was just as well. She had said I'd asked permission, and she said, well, people had photographed things before, and but not filming. So I'm not so good with photographing, but I said to her, well, I'd like to photograph. See, when I first went down there, it almost took my breath away. And I said to Anna, I said, this must be the best collection of its kind in the world, what I'm looking at. And it's far from being on dusty shelves and tucked away. This is really beautifully cared for and displayed, except all very tight together. Because it's sort of in storage. Well, you'll see when I put the video on. And I said, well, I'd like to photograph everything. And she said, well, I said, it might take a while. And she said, how long? And I said, she said, more than an hour? And I said, no, I don't think it would be more than an hour. But she was agreeable. And I went along clicking, photographing everything I could. Now, many of the photographs, it was dark. And many of the photographs are not a little hard to see, but this was for study. And that's what Paolo had realized, that I was going there not simply as a tourist, but I was going there to study. I'd even like to make replicas of some of the things that I saw there. Anyway, you will see, I will put these online, as long as I'm allowed to. It's going to take a little while. You're going to have to wait a little bit to see this slideshow, because I'm going to contact the director and make sure it's okay. Actually, you're not supposed to take pictures within the museum. A little bit more that I want to say before I go on to the seed of Wolf. There are things I do not understand about what happened there with that collection. I found out that the financing of that new museum, it's a very new museum, state of the art. A lot of it came from the European Union. It was some kind of an agreement. But the effect of it seems to have been to have taken these artifacts out of public view. Whereas they had been, this museum had been it is still right down there along the river. And it was easy to get to. I almost could not find the Museum of Ethnology. As a matter of fact, this day when I took the bus up and I asked the bus driver what would be the closest, he drove that route every day. I mean, that was his job. And at first he didn't know where that museum was. And he said, oh, okay, I know where it is. And yes, that's the stop. So it's state of the art. It's beautiful, but it's, in my experience, it was virtually deserted. And I don't really understand that. And I wonder a little bit if I can do something to change that, because you can probably see I'm enthused about that collection and what that has to show and to learn. But I don't know the state of their public relations. I don't know if the museum wants more people there. It's I just don't know. There are things I do not understand. But I'll try to find out. And as I say, I know people now, and I intend to write to them. who knows, I may even end up going back to Lisbon with an even more specific goal in mind than the mountains. All right, the seed of woof. Well, Claudia, at one point when it looked like I wasn't going to get to see the stuff because I hadn't made an appointment. I hadn't even known for sure that the stuff was there, but she gave me the email addresses and stuff, and so I said, well, and I bought this book, and I said, well, was there ever a movie made of the abandoned villages where, you know, I could study the set of a movie, look at all the details, so I could see, you know, the kind of things that I'd seen in the collection. She went back in the other room, came back, and she said, yes, there was one called O Fim do Mundo, and I think I've written this down before. I just saw that. That translates to the end of the world. I just saw that that is 2013. There was a new movie called The End of the World. This was 1993, I think. Anyway, she came back with that answer, and then I went on a pursuit to see if there was any way I could see that movie. I have not been able to see it. I've only seen the trailer, but I do know who the director is, and I know where he is, and I may contact him as well, because I began to think about a movie. I sort of feel like the world needs a certain movie. Virtually, the world needs a certain kind of movie. In my mind, I'm calling it WOOF, Willing Hand Workers on Organic Farms. And as I go into the 5th year, I'll tell you more about this, but that seed has already begun to grow. And so throughout the rest of the trip, I kept thinking about that and thinking about that. And I won't go into it more right now. I'll just say that, well, you'll see some of that. All right, well, as I say, you'll have to wait a little bit for that, but happily you will get to see Shirley's and Thomas's view the last day at Lisbon. All right, bye for now.